falling here over the hills. And then we look west as Storm Dudley arrives. Heavy rain, the bright colours across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England through the afternoon. We could see a very intense band of rain swinging southwards later on. Parts of the east and southeast not seeing much rain, but it will be windy. It will be mild. Temperatures in double figures up to 14 Celsius, but not feeling all that pleasant with the strength of the wind. And then those winds strengthen further. This amber weather warning in place across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. A broader yellow warning area in place. Gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour. Transport disruption, particularly in the amber area. The potential for power cuts as well. So a pretty wild Wednesday evening, wet and windy for many. That storm system does tend to clear through, so the winds are easing down during Thursday as Dudley clears away, but it'll still be blustery on Thursday. And then we look down to the southwest. Storm Eunice set to arrive Thursday night and into Friday. More across the southern half of the UK. Again, the potential for damaging gusts of wind and some snowfall.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at 8 o'clock on Fridays and again at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me. 8 on Fridays, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, you might have noticed that Prince Andrew has just been announced that he's settled a civil sexual assault case brought against him in the US by Virginia Giuffre. What's going to be next then? What do you reckon? Will he ever be able to return to royal public duties? And who is going to be funding this settlement? There's a lot to discuss there, I can tell you. There's also lots happening in the world of COVID. Leaked documents show the end of the free COVID tests are nigh. Good, I say. Stopping this mass testing can only be a good thing. And Novak Djokovic has said that he won't play Wimbledon or the French Open if a vaccine is required. Many, bizarrely if you ask me, are furious at his position. I say, good on him. And actually, why aren't more people busy questioning why there would even be a rule in the first place that says you need to be vaccinated to play tennis? And over in Canada, the protests have taken another twist. Trudeau has invoked the Never-Before-Used Emergencies Act to try and stop the truckers. This, by the way, amongst other things, gives him the power to freeze the protesters' bank accounts. What? The world is going mad, I tell you. Speaking of which, Minister Oliver Dowden has said that woke ideology is everywhere and that we need to find the confidence to mount a vigorous defence of the values of the free society. I couldn't agree more. And I also want to talk to you about betting shops. How many on one street is too many? There's a street that has got 4 on it, pretty much all next to each other. Is that too much, or is it just fair competition? All of that to come, but first, the news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. I'm Polly Middlehurst with your top stories. And the breaking news today. Prince Andrew has agreed an out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre in the civil sex abuse case against him in the States. Court papers show the Duke of York is now to pay a substantial donation to Miss Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. Prince Andrew's also agreed to demonstrate his regret for his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The lawyer, Lisa Bloom, who represents 8 victims of Jeffrey Epstein, welcomed the settlement as a victory for Virginia Giuffre.
She was able to accomplish what nobody else has, that is to get Prince Andrew to stand squarely with victims of sex trafficking and sexual abuse, to make a significant contribution to her charity, which will help other victims in cases that don't get media coverage, where celebrities aren't involved, but where many women are still suffering.
Lisa Bloom, well, an attachment to the letter announcing the settlement gave brief details of the agreement between Prince Andrew and Miss Giuffre, but it indicated the sum would not be disclosed. It read, Prince Andrew has never intended to malign Miss Giuffre's character, and he accepts that she has suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. It continues, Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. He pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Epstein by supporting the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims. Well, that's the statement just coming from the courts in central Manhattan today. There'll be further analysis of that story throughout Michelle Dewberry's programme next. But for the moment, other news. And President Putin says he does not want a war in Europe, but that troops are being partially withdrawn from the Ukrainian border. He's been speaking in Moscow alongside the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz as European leaders continue to urge Putin to de-escalate. The NATO Secretary-General, Jens Stoltenberg, says there isn't any evidence of a Russian withdrawal at all from the Ukrainian border.
We have not seen any de-escalation on the ground, not seen any signs of reduced Russian military presence on the borders of Ukraine. But we will continue to monitor and to follow closely what Russia is doing.
Jens Stoltenberg speaking for NATO. Well, in the UK, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson spoke to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. He said that the UK and the EU should prepare a package of economic measures that would punish Russia if they breached Ukraine's sovereignty. Earlier, he told reporters the intelligence shows there are mixed messages coming from the Kremlin.
The intelligence that we're seeing today is still not encouraging. We've got Russian field hospitals being constructed near the border with Ukraine in Belarus for only can be construed as a preparation for an invasion. You've got more battalion tactical groups actually being brought closer to the border with Ukraine, according to the intelligence that we're seeing. So mixed signals, I think, at the moment.
Boris Johnson. Meanwhile, one of the Kremlin's most vocal critics in Russia, Alexei Navalny, has appeared in court today. The opposition politician is facing a new trial on charges of fraud and contempt of court. His allies say the allegations are politically motivated. Now, news in the UK, and research shows people who are vaccinated are less likely to be affected by long COVID. The findings from the UK Health Security Agency's review of 15 studies showed 2 doses of Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Moderna, or a single shot of the Johnson & Johnson jab cut the risk of developing symptoms by around a half. The UK HSA says the 3 most common ailments are fatigue, shortness of breath and muscle or joint pain. Immigration rules on care worker jobs has been relaxed. The profession has been added now to the government's list of occupation shortages. It's designed to help migrants get work visas to fill jobs where there are significant staffing gaps. A study has found potentially toxic levels of pharmaceutical drugs in a quarter of rivers across the world. The National Academy of Sciences surveyed more than 1,000 sites, including the River Thames in London and the Brazilian Amazon. The research measured the presence of 61 key substances that pose a risk to freshwater habitats and wildlife. A 16-year-old will attempt to become the youngest person to fly solo around the world. Mac Rutherford says he's determined to follow his older sister Zara, who last month broke the record for the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. The British-Belgian teenager aims to break the record currently held by Briton Travis Ludlow, who completed the trip at the age of 18 years in 151 days. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company tonight until 7. My panel, Martin Daubney, who's the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, Scarlett Maguire, who's the former Labour advisor, and author and journalist James Bloodworth. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co. It's not just about us here and our thoughts, it's about you at home as well and yours. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GB News. Now, let's start by recapping, shall we, on the news that Polly brought to you. Prince Andrew has agreed an out-of-court settlement in principle with Virginia Giuffre in the civil sex abuse case against him. Court papers in the US show the Duke of York will pay a substantial sum to Miss Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. Prince Andrew has also agreed to demonstrate his regret for his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. An attachment to the letter announcing the settlement gave brief details of the agreement between Andrew and Miss Giuffre, but indicated the sum would not be disclosed. It read, Prince Andrew has never intended to malign Miss Giuffre's character, and he accepts that she's suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. He pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Epstein by supporting the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims. Well, joining me to discuss this is solicitor, legal commentator and journalist Joshua Rosenberg. Good evening to you.
Hello,
Joshua,
Michelle.
I've got to say, many of us were expecting Prince Andrew to kind of take this to the court to fight to clear his name. He said that he would cooperate with the FBI. Now we've got this, you know, this about turn, if you will, this entire U-turn. Why do you think he might have done this?
Any civil claim can be settled, and most civil claims in the United States are settled. A claimant brings a claim, they're seeking compensation, damages perhaps, they may be seeking an apology, they're seeking recognition, whatever they're seeking, if they can get it without going to court, it saves a great deal of time, money and risk. And it's not surprising to me that this case has settled. You may say that it's a surprising time. You might have thought that it would wait until both sides had exchanged their evidence, both sides had exchanged documents, both sides had had the opportunity to ask questions of one another. But nevertheless, we can infer that negotiations have been going on in the background for some time. We don't know for how long, and clearly the parties have agreed on a deal.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the timing, and you say that actually we might have expected it to be later. On the contrary, I would have expected it to be sooner if this was the intention. Why go through all of what we've been seeing and hearing just to arrive at this point?
Well, that's a very fair point, isn't it? Because David Boies, the lawyer acting for Virginia Giuffre, said recently that they had offered Prince Andrew's side the opportunity of mediation some time ago, and that this was turned down. On the other hand, it sometimes waits until you see whether the other side is willing to go ahead, willing to issue proceedings, as happened in this case, pressing for evidence to be taken, and that tends to concentrate people's minds minds, doesn't it? It makes them think this is real and it's not going away, and it perhaps gives them an incentive to settle a case.
Yeah, just help us understand. There's a point being discussed at the moment about the NDA, whether or not there's an NDA attached to this outcome that would prevent Ms Dewberry from going out and sharing her story. What's your view on that?
We don't know. I would have thought it's very likely because it's quite clear that the two sides are not willing to say any more today than they are in this statement, which you've broadcast, and that's clearly an agreement between them. So you would have thought that he would have requested a non-disclosure agreement from her as part of the settlement. There's no mention of it in the deal, but it might well be part of the formal legal documents which are going to be filed within the next month. He has clearly agreed this wording, which we can look at in detail, and he clearly wouldn't want her to say any more against him. I suppose he might even be able to take proceedings against her if she does, and perhaps the settlement is arranged so that she doesn't get all the money at once and it's paid over a period of time, provided she keeps silent. We don't know. But yes, you would have thought there would be a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is one of the lawyers that were acting on behalf of some of Jeffrey Epstein's victims was speaking to one of my former earlier presenters, should I say, and she was saying that having looked at this, she would have expected if there was an NDA that it would have been listed at this point already.
It doesn't have to be, because an agreement is an agreement, and one of the points about a non-disclosure agreement is that you don't even disclose the existence of it, let alone what it says in certain circumstances. It's a private agreement between the two sides. So the fact that it's not mentioned in this court statement certainly doesn't establish that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and what would you say, very briefly, if you will, there's a lot of people out there that are kind of saying, right, this definitely proves that he's guilty. Obviously, Prince Andrew says he absolutely isn't. Many people, though, are kind of inferring, because they've reached a settlement, they are saying that that indicates guilt. What is the legal position when it comes to that?
There is nothing in this agreement in which he admits to any misbehaviour with Virginia Giuffre. He accepts that she has suffered as an established victim of abuse, but he doesn't say that he abused her. He pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Jeffrey Epstein, but he doesn't say he had any association with Virginia Giuffre. There are all sorts of reasons why people settle. There are all sorts of reasons why people bring claims, and the fact that this has settled doesn't mean any more than it says. On the other hand, you don't pay a lot of money, and I think there are two distinct payments here. There's a settlement, the sum of which is not being disclosed, and a substantial donation to a charity in support of victims' rights. You don't pay that sort of money unless you want a case to go away.
Interesting. Joshua Rosenberg, thanks very much for your insight there. Now, what does this actually mean then for the future of Prince Andrew? Joining me next to discuss this is the royal editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Jobson. Good evening to you, Robert. What does the future look like now for Prince Andrew? Do you think that because this case is settled, some might say hopefully gone away, although I suspect not, that he should be able to return to public life as a royal? Robert, pause, hold that thought. I'm sure what you're saying is absolutely fascinating, but I cannot hear you. So we're just going to try and reconnect, this time with sound. But for now, Martin Daubney, your thoughts on this?
Call me Mystic Meg, but I think a lot of us have been predicting since the beginning.
Can you hear me? 1, 2.
Oh, hello. We've got, sorry, Martin Daubney, no offence to you, but Robert Jobson is a bit more interesting.
More handsome.
Robert, I can hear you. Good evening.
I can hear you, yeah.
Excellent. I was just asking, sorry about that. I was just asking, what is the future for Prince Andrew? Do you think that he'll be able to return to royal duties?
Well, I don't think there's any difference to what happened when they stripped him of his patronages and his military associations. I think that was a clear moment there that he was not going to continue in a public role. We'll see him, I think, at the service of Thanksgiving to his father on the 29th of March at Westminster Abbey. But will he have a public role to play? I don't think so. I don't think people will necessarily want him to have that public role. He's got a lot of building to be done in terms of his reputation. Maybe like in the John Profumo affair, that he could quietly get on with behind the scenes, working on charitable organisations and not having that necessarily as a public role. I don't see there's a public role for him going forward, because a lot of people, as you were saying in your chat with Joshua there's a lot of people, although there's no guilt attached in this settlement, will be asking why the NEC paying such a substantial amount of money, both to the charity and to Miss Giuffre personally. So, look, I don't think it's money.
Am I right in thinking that Downing Street haven't issued a statement in response? Downing Street? I don't mean Downing Street, I mean Buckingham Palace. Have they responded to any of this yet? Robert, I've lost you again. Martin, I know I made you feel like second best then.
Never.
Well, that's only because Robert Jobson, what he doesn't know about the Royals is not worth knowing. But your thoughts?
I think, like I said before, call me Mystic Meg, but a lot of people, I think, correctly predicted that Prince Andrew would never see the inside of a court. It would be calamitous and disastrous for the entire royal institution if that were to happen. And so today's verdict, I think, just gives this whiff that justice is for sale. Now, OK, this was an out-of-court settlement, but we all really kind of know. I mean, he could be innocent. I could be the next England manager. But the fact of the matter is, it looks like he's guilty. You don't pay a shed load of money out, generally, unless you just want something to go away. And I just think there will always be the lingering doubt. And it just feels like all the hallmarks of justice for sale.
Yeah, Kenneth has emailed in saying Prince Andrew buys his way out of a court case. It's one law for them and one law for the rest of us. I've got to say, though, out-of-court settlements are available for all, if you've got pockets deep enough, but that, I guess, is the key point. James Bloodworth.
Yeah, I mean, I find it extremely odd that he would be willing to pay a large sum of money to someone who, until recently, he was claiming he'd never even met. And someone
he said he couldn't recall meeting her, didn't he?
Yes, and someone subjected to those such egregious allegations, you would think they'd want automatically to clear their name, not to simply just to... Because he would know how this looks, because this is how it always looks when people give larger sums of money so something doesn't go to court. He's paid out, so we can't talk about the issue anymore. And also, I think it's important to ask where the money is coming from for that. Taxpayers fund the royal family, so is taxpayer money, is any taxpayer money being used to silence to ensure that a victim of abuse keeps her mouth shut? I think that would be disgraceful.
Yeah, that was going to be my second question to Robert Jobson, but couldn't hear him. No point asking a question if I can't hear the answer back. So, Scarlett, I mean, a lot of people, they are asking that point, actually. A lot of the viewers are saying, well, who is going to fund this? Is it going to be me, the taxpayer?
Yes, I think the thought was it would be his mother, the Queen, out of her private income, which is phenomenal. I mean, I think she's probably the richest woman in Britain. But actually, if you look at the statement he made, I mean, it's terrible. He says, I never wanted to impugn Virginia. Well, actually, he smeared her across the front pages. He said about how much he regrets. Well, when he was asked, when there wasn't money involved, when he was asked by Emily Maitlis, he was incredibly nice about Jeffrey Epstein. He said, this is a man who's done a lot for me. I mean, he didn't say, this is a convicted paedophile, I wish I'd never met him. Absolutely not. I mean, the thing about this is...
Was he convicted of paedophilia, by the way? I didn't think that was
Technically, if you have sex with a minor, it's paedophilia. I'm not saying it was young children. I am saying it was young women, right? And there is... I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, not Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
And clearly, now that he's put out a statement, and you look at the statement and you look at what he said before, and they've got nothing to do with each other. And as everybody says, this is all about money. This is all about getting out of a very difficult situation. And actually, Michelle, like you, I expected this to happen months ago. I didn't expect it to happen at the door of the court. I thought the quicker for his sake, I have absolutely no time for Prince Andrew whatsoever, but for his sake, one would have thought he would have done it as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's obviously the lawyer knows far more than I do on this matter. But if this was me being accused of all manner of things and I wanted it to go away, and that was the route that I was ultimately more than likely going to go down, I would have done that ASAP to make it try and go away as soon as you physically could, as opposed to kind of letting it tick along and speculate and all the rest of it. What do we all think to the question that I did put to Robert then about him coming back into public royal duties? Do we reckon he could or would?
No,
never.
There should never be any position for him in public life. He's completely surrendered.
Even
the
though
right
he's not
to
being
that.
found guilty of anything.
Doesn't matter. It's completely brought the entire nation, Britain itself, never mind the crown, into complete and utter disrepute.
What?
It
You're
has.
telling me that these accusations have brought the entire nation into disrepute?
I think
because we're laughing stock of the
royal money
international-
is being used to get this victim to stay quiet, then I think absolutely it has.
I mean, I think we have to remember, as far as public duties are concerned, that actually the armed forces of which the troop, platoons, whatever, that Andrew was in charge of, have asked for him to go.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants Andrew. Nobody outside the Queen wants him to do anything. The thought of him showing humility and doing something to try and pay back.
But I'm going to push back a bit, almost to play devil's advocate, if you will, because if you have not been found guilty of something, you're fully advocating on this panel that you essentially lose your livelihood.
No, it's not that. He's a royal. He's not like an ordinary member of the public. He's had a debatable lifestyle for years. He's always called Randy Andy, Air Miles Andy, gallivanting around the world, £250,000 of taxpayers' money, a huge personal fortune which he's accrued through privilege, entitlements and connections. He'd have been a nobody and a nothing without the royal connection.
Well, is there anyone out there that disagrees? Is there anybody out there, if you exist, get in touch with me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. I'm fascinated. Is there anyone out there that thinks, actually, no, we want him back? Do you want him back in a public role? Fascinated. By the way, I was asking Robert Jobson whether or not Buckingham Palace had issued a statement in response. The answer I'm being told to that is no. David has emailed in and says, shouldn't we now open the discussion as to post-Queen Elizabeth? Do we really want to continue with this dysfunctional family? Goodness me, that would take us off. That would take up the whole show, I think. But you tell me, very quick, just a yes or no, just for time reasons. Do we want to continue with this family post-Queen Elizabeth?
I mean, look who we get next, Charles. I mean, no.
What's he done wrong? Oh, God, actually, no, don't tell me. I just want yes or no. James?
No, I don't think so, because I'd like to have a system where we can get rid of these people more easily.
Martin, yes or no?
Charles is Greta Thunberg in tweeds. I think he's going to be a useless king, but I'm strongly for a strong monarch. We need it. It's great for tourism.
Right, well, there you go. That's
a good
thought.
reason to have a monarch. Tourism. For God's sake, this is about governance.
Someone told me on this panel. Someone told me on this panel the other day, Professor Lee Jones, is it? Yeah. He told me that more people visit Chester Zoo than Buckingham Palace. No, he did. Seriously.
I'm sure he's right.
Apparently, that was. It's all available online. I can't remember where he told me now. But if you're bored, when I finish, don't do it now, obviously. In fact, actually, I'm going to go to a break. So if you are bored in your break, there you go. That's a little fun fact. You can Google it. Is that really the case? Chester Zoo, more people visit that than they do Buckingham Palace. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. That's your homework whilst we're on it. When we come back, I want to talk to you about living with COVID. There's been a lot going on in the world when it comes to COVID today. We'll have that and more coming up.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company. Just as a reminder, for those of you listening and not watching, we've got Martin Daubney, who's the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, Scarlett Maguire, who's the former Labour advisor, and author and journalist James Bloodworth. Now, let's talk COVID, shall we? It's been a bit of a busy day in the land of COVID, because living with COVID, we hear that sentence all the time now, don't we? What does it actually mean, though? There's been lots of suggestions and talk about it today. For example, the end of the free lateral flow tests in England. I say good to that, got to be honest, because I think mass testing and obsessive testing, that is the thing that's going to keep us in this cycle. But I know lots of you will have different opinions. Over in Northern Ireland, the restrictions there are no longer legally binding. That's just to name a couple of things. You might have noticed Novak Djokovic, he's been in the news today saying that he's willing to miss the French Open and Wimbledon if they require him to be vaccinated. And then we've got the small issue of what on earth is going on now in Canada. We touch on this truckers' convoy, don't we? And some of you might say, well, why do I care what's going on in Canada? I would say, well, we should care about what's going on in Canada, actually, because it's much broader than just a few truckers, I can tell you. Martin Daubney, start with that. Any order you want to. You can talk about living with COVID here, you can talk about Djokovic, or you can talk about Canada.
I'll talk about all of it. So I'm firstly, I think, yes, it's absolutely time to just get on with getting the country fully open and getting back to normal. I think we'll look back on the past 2 years as one of the most catastrophic acts of self-harm that we've seen outside of wartime on our economy, our health, our mental health. Lateral flow tests ending for free. Well, they're not for free. They cost £6 billion so far. They cost £20 for a box, all funded by the taxpayer. It's got to be paid back sometime. So hurrah that that's ending. As far as Djokovic goes, at last a sportsman with a backbone.
Pause on Djokovic, actually, because Scarlett, before we come on to Djokovic, I'll ask you about this testing, because I think it's wonderful that
I'm sure
we're going to stop this mass testing. I think it's excellent, long overdue. However, I also know that there are some people, particularly people that are vulnerable in society, that are actually quite afraid of this kind of, the bonfire of restrictions, for want of a better word. What's your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, people I'm seeing this evening are going to see her elderly mother, and they test before they see the mother because they want to keep her away from COVID. I mean, I have to say, I had surgery very recently. People tested before they came to see me. Unfortunately, I did have to go on a bus. And guess what? I had COVID last week, which really helped.
What, from the bus?
Well, where else would I have had it? Because people can't be bothered to wear masks, right? I was vulnerable. I mean, that is the problem, is there are vulnerable people. And what I've always felt about these restrictions, and it's just like the letting it go, is it's one extreme to the other. You had restrictions and people weren't allowed to sunbathe and they weren't allowed to sit on benches and ridiculous things like that. And now, people with COVID can go anywhere and it really doesn't matter. And people who are worried about COVID, the elderly, people like me, I mean, it is worrying. So it's very, very difficult.
What would you like then? So you've just said that you are worried about COVID. What would you like? Would you like these restrictions, masks, whatever, to continue indefinitely?
I think on public transport, actually, that people should go on wearing masks.
Why? There's no science to back that position up.
Actually, there is, Martin.
Well,
is that
where?
If you wear a mask, right, you are less likely. It's just you're less likely to give somebody a cold or the flu.
It's a different thing.
What did you say?
It's a different way. It's a different transmission.
It's an airborne virus, though. It does reduce the transmission.
It reduces
giving the chance of giving it to someone
else. There's no
else.
credible scientific evidence show that masks have helped reduce.
It doesn't necessarily help protect you as the wearer, but it does. There is evidence that it helps stop.
The interesting thing about masks is unlike
they don't work.
No, the interesting thing about masks is actually they protect other people. So when people say, oh, you know, when Sajid Javid or Boris says, oh, well, you know, it's about personal responsibility, it's whether you're willing to take responsibility for other
politics.
Whether you're willing to take responsibility for other people, right? Is the thing about vaccinations is it's partly herd immunity. Mostly it's about, you know, I know because I've had 3 vaccinations that having COVID wasn't a big deal. Didn't help. Hospital wasn't pleased, but it didn't help. But actually, you know, if you're an 85-year-old woman, as this mother is, obviously you do not want to get COVID, right? So what you're saying is that either vulnerable people have to isolate. I mean, because it means they can't see anybody if you aren't tested. So who do you see if you're vulnerable?
Well, if we look at the risks, the actual risks of the new variant compared to Alpha, compared to it's much smaller.
If you're an 85-year-old woman, who do you see? That's what I'm trying to say. Who do you see?
That's no way to form a debate. We look at the social risk across the board, and the science shows us that the Omicron variant is no more deadly than flu.
I know, Martin.
So do we close the world because of flu?
I'm trying to actually talk about reality. I'm trying to...
based on science.
No, what you're saying is, this is real. What I'm saying is, if you are an 85-year-old woman, what do you do? Do you say, well, you know, I might or might not die of it? Or do you say, I actually don't want to see people unless they've been tested?
What would you do about what would that person do about the flu?
I don't think you wouldn't go out with the flu, though. I mean, if I had the flu, I wouldn't. I'd self-isolate without the government needing me without the government telling me to do that. I think that's just. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go around on the tube if I had the flu because I think that'd be fairly socially irresponsible and selfish to do that.
We've never done that before.
No. In the flu, you typically can't get out of bed.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, they say if you have the flu, you couldn't pick up a £20 note at the end of the bed.
I've got a cold, for example. I've got a cold today.
Well, I think that's far less serious. But I think there are immunocompromised people still out there who the vaccine has not worked with. And I don't think that we should have any more restrictions in terms of lockdowns or social distancing. But I don't think it is this big kind of threat to liberty to ask people just, for the moment in the winter, to wear a mask on the tube, say. And with the testing for the lateral flow test, I think there are certain circumstances, going into a care home, for example, where you should have to take a test beforehand. I don't think it's that. I think this is this big threat to liberty to have to do that.
Yeah, see, this kind of divides opinion, I have to say. I mean, I don't wear a mask. I don't mind admitting that. I don't like the whole kind of sentiment that if I wear one, I'm a good person, and if I don't wear one, I'm a bad person. That sentiment doesn't wash with me because these things are either deeply effective in terms of reducing transmission or they're not. And I think the science is out for them. And I think that masks do have a lot of unintended consequences to them, which is why I don't wear them. But if I was going to see an extremely vulnerable person, you know, if it was someone that I don't know, my mum or whatever, like if you're describing an 85-year-old woman, then I probably would be sensible and I would do things that I perhaps wouldn't ordinarily do, but I certainly am not prepared to do those things all day, every day. Does that make me selfish? You will tell me if you think it does. I am absolutely sure about that. Should we talk about Canada before we move on?
Yeah, so the truckers' protest in Canada began when Justin Trudeau, who sets himself up as this kind of pronoun-wielding, rainbow, lovable, flaxen-haired liberal, he's not.
He's dark.
He's turned into a complete...
He's not even flaxen-haired, Martin.
He's turned into a tyrant overnight. He's tested positive for fascism. What's happened is these guys who were being forced to obey vaccine mandates unless their livelihoods would be taken away, went in their convoy, and now the government is freezing and seizing their assets. That's worse than what Thatcher did to the miners. And I'm saying that as a miner's son. You are freezing the working class's ability to eat and live. because they don't agree with the government vaccine mandate. That is tyranny. And where are the Liberal leaders around the world lining up to condemn him? They're silent because they're on his side. Well, this Build Back Better nonsense. He is absolutely behaving like a tyrant, and we should condemn him outright.
Actually, do you know what the truckers are doing in Ottawa? They've completely blocked Ottawa. You can't get, you cannot, ambulances can't drive down roads. They tried doing it afterwards in other cities in Canada, and they realised and they blocked places around the hospitals. Ottawa is completely log-jammed, and about half of those people, they're not Canadian, they're Americans. They came over. This is completely political, right? And actually, if you look at what the Canadians feel, if you look at the polls in Canada, they are in favour.
You believe the polls?
Well, maybe you know better what the Canadians feel. I have to say the Canadians
or Trump. Polls are rigged. I think they are.
Then we can't believe anything, right? What I'm saying is the Canadians who've spoken to me about it are absolutely furious. They feel that they're being held hostage by the truckers who arrived with their portaloos, ready to stay there for a month. People can't get into hospital. People can't get into work. Ottawa is completely paralysed.
The truckers are being held hostage because they're being denied the ability to work by the government. How can you, as somebody from the left, stand there and say you agree with working class people being prohibited from working by a government? That's the opposite of what you should do.
I am saying that these truckers are holding Ottawa hostage, and actually what they are doing is they're preventing most working people in Ottawa from working. So they're not doing any good. The Canadians want to get rid of them, right? The Canadians are desperate to get rid of them. They do not want these truckers taking over Ottawa. They have got everything. They've paralysed a city.
COVID has trumped our reasoning with people being able to work and be able to maintain bodily autonomy and to make free choices. This is mandates coming from a tyrant, and I just cannot understand for the life of me. As somebody from the left, I consider myself an old lefty. I just look at this and just see a breakdown in what it means to represent and support the working classes.
So obviously you agreed that Insulate Britain could take over the roads.
But they weren't told they had to have a jab to exist.
No, hold on.
It's quite different.
No, it's actually completely... What I'm saying is these people have paralysed the capital city of Canada, and you say that's fine, and yet you're against, Insulate Britain sort of sitting down on a motorway.
Hang on, there's a bit of a difference, and I want to get James Bloodworth in here, who's sitting very patiently. There's a little bit of a difference between insulation and actually being told that you have to be injected with something. The two causes for me are they're worlds apart, let's put it bluntly. But James Bloodworth, what we're talking about here, by the way, is this is the Emergencies Act. So Justin Trudeau has kind of enacted the Emergencies Act for the first time, by the way, and it gives him so many powers, one of which is, as we've just been talking about, to freeze the bank accounts of the protesters. I find that disgraceful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any time really for the protesters' cause, but I do think there's a danger of overreaction on the part of the Canadian government. I mean, Canada has very high vaccination coverage. The government doesn't need to, the Liberals, whatever, don't need to overreact in terms of kind of forcing this issue through. I mean, I think there could be a backlash against this if they do take measures like that. I think it's just unnecessary.
But you've just said you don't have much time, or whatever your wording was, for the cause.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have much time for holding the city to ransom, basically, for vaccine mandates. I think there is, as we've seen with the Djokovic case, I think it's someone's right to avoid the vaccine, for example, with Djokovic, but it's absolutely a country's right to deny him entry. And employers should be able to decide whether they want to employ someone if they've not had a vaccine or not. And the funny thing is, the people on the right and Conservatives would absolutely stand by that if that principle, if it was anything else. But on vaccines, for some reason, they suddenly think they're suddenly for workers' rights.
Do you know what I find the most absurd thing in all of this? I'm not in favour of mandating people to be injected with anything, full stop, by the way. There's no caveats to that. But I really do feel like the world has gone mad, because these vaccines, they don't stop you from catching COVID. They don't stop you from transmitting COVID. And this is the bit I just think, is everyone losing their minds in all of this conversation? I mean, we're just talking about Prince Charles, for example. I think he's got COVID for the second time. Camilla, you know, triple jabbed people catching and spreading Omicron. I say this often, I really do mean it. I think the world is going mad. But I want to know your thoughts, though. Do keep them coming in. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. We're going to take a quick break. So let me know. Keep your thoughts coming in. There's lots of different opinions coming. Right, I can see them flying in. Anyway, Oliver Dowden, he has spoken out about what he calls the painful work psychodrama. Is the world going work? It won't surprise you to think that I say yes, it is. And also, what about bookmakers? Do you think they're exploiting the vulnerable? We'll have that and more after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. A quick reminder as to my panel tonight. We've got Martin Daubney, who's the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, Scarlett Maguire, who's the former Labour advisor, and author and journalist James Bloodworth. Now, the Conservative Party chair, Oliver Dowden, has said that the UK and the US should not be obsessing over pronouns or seeking to decolonise, that's a much better word, isn't it? Mathematics in a speech denouncing painful work psychodrama. Speaking to a think tank, the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., Dowden said that the work ideology was a dangerous form of decadence at a time when our attention should be focused on external foes. He posted this statement on social media. Today, a social media mob can cancel you merely because you have dared to challenge one of the left's fashionable nostrums. So Conservatives themselves must find the confidence to mount the vigorous defence of the values of a free society. Do you think he's got a point? Because today it was reported that the Educate and Celebrate charity told teachers that they should be moving towards a gender-free model and have pupils call them teacher rather than sir or miss. She also advised them to dispense with terms such as boys, girls, son and mother, replacing them with the gender-neutral words pupils, students, child and parents. God, I'm sure I should be a bit more sensitive to this stuff, but I look at it and I just think it's all weird and unnecessary. James Bloodworth, am I being a bit harsh?
No, I mean, I think with the example of the schools, the pronouns, I think that's just a ridiculous story. I think it's a charity, has made this argument. It seems like they want to make headlines and get attention. It doesn't seem, there's no clamour for this, it seems, in society. There's no clamour for this in schools. But while I think Oliver Dowden makes a good point about we should stop obsessing about the things that divide us and focus on the things that unite us. I mean, I think one of the problems with identity politics, it's parceling people up into different smaller and smaller categories and inventing these squabbles where the most people aren't really concerned about. But I think at the same time, I think some of the language he uses, I think, is just hyperbole. I don't think it's a dangerous form of decadence or a threat to Western civilization or whatever. I think there's this stuff on the fringe, and cancel culture is real. But a lot of this stuff is on the fringe. Britain is not buying into this. It's fringe activists. And I do think, yes, we need to stand up against some of this stuff. But it's not, Western society isn't threatened by it.
But Scarlett, I mean, there is quite a real thing in society at the moment where you've got to have certain views to be seen as a good person. And if you don't hold certain views, then you're immediately classed as a bad person. So, the whole trans conversation is one example that springs to mind, the whole kind of TERF label that people throw around. To me, this whole kind of gender thing in teaching kids that you can change, who you are, your sex, your gender.
You're getting in, you're taking on too much. I mean, one of the things is the whole trans thing is a serious debate, and then there are on the fringes of each people actually throwing insults which are completely unnecessary, and they come from both extremes. And actually, in the middle are a lot of people who are saying, yeah, okay, of course, it's very tough trans people are among the most vulnerable in society, and to start saying, oh, you can't be a woman because you weren't born a woman, and get into that is, and on the other hand, that it isn't breastfeeding, it's chest feeding. Both of those are ridiculous, right? So actually the whole trans debate is, yes, on the extremes, but let's have a real debate, and that's the problem. The thing about schools, actually, it's not about teaching children. I mean, if you talk to children at school, I mean, I'm talking secondary schools, they are all talking about changing gender, that's a dead name, Oliver is now called Cecilia or whatever. That's what's really going on. And that's what I think that people are actually missing.
But why? Where is that coming from? What's driving that?
Because I think teenagers always are they're looking for ways of breaking boundaries. I mean, I remember doing it, decades and decades ago. This is what they're doing. So I think, but coming back to what James said, I do think Oliver Dowden's speech is just clickbait, and that's what it was meant to be. And I remember, them saying, "Oh, this is great." In number 10, Munira Mirza, actually the person who resigned because she thinks Boris Johnson behaved badly, she is the great culture warrior because this is what we want. We want war on woke. I mean, it's the whole thing is just got up. And in the 80s, I remember it was political correctness, and everybody went on and on about how dreadful it was to be political correctness. Political correctness was about saying, actually, don't be racist, right, which is now taken for granted. Right. So I do think there's a lot of fuss about nothing.
Martin Daubney's itching to get... Go on, Martin.
I don't think it's a fuss about nothing, and that is, we can roll our eyes and go, oh, it's students, it's liberals, it's teachers, they're just doing their thing. But this has consequences in the real world, and in particular, the trans debate. I think another group that the left really used to defend were women. And now we are seeing the erosion of women's spaces, the erosion of women's safety, because this trans ideology is taking a hold, and it's taking a hold in schools, and it needs to be kicked out. Stonewall is a political organisation which has impregnated our police forces, our public services. They're waking up to this now, and they're kicking them out, and not before time. Because there's a deep misogyny in this, I feel. I really do feel that we are erasing women by making women's spaces gender neutral. When did we consult women on this? Or was this just something that we have to kind of go along with? Because if we don't, we'll be cancelled or be transphobic and be smeared with all these labels. And this nonsense started in Canada when Jordan Peterson spoke out about it, when he refused to be told which words to use, words are important and words have consequences. Free speech is in grave peril. This isn't a phony war, it's a real war. And I also do think, James, that things like critical race theory and all this stuff is coming over from America. And we need to be really, really awake to this because our children should be educated and not indoctrinated.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's a fair point about critical race theory, and sometimes the issues in America are kind of transposed onto our society as if they're the same when they're absolutely not. But I still think some of this stuff is overblown. So you can disagree with this stuff and find an outlet in British newspapers, for example, or on television, as we're talking about it here. I do think cancellation has had a terrible toll on some people's careers, absolutely. But I don't think it's as big an issue as it's being made out.
Look at J.K. Rowling, for example. I mean, she's
still has a career.
Yeah, she's rich enough.
I think she's treated badly, and I think some of the stuff that the abuse that's sent to her is just disgusting. But she's not been. You know, it's not like the Soviet Union, like some of these comparisons where she's thrown into a gulag and has no career.
But
she's
actually,
still writes
because
and makes lots of
Scarlett,
money.
when I mention J.K. Rowling, you almost laugh and say, well, she's still a multimillionaire. That's irrelevant. If you look at what's happened to her in terms of, you know, the product that was her product, by the way, her brainchild, the whole Harry Potter thing, she's almost getting marginalised and removed from something that she created.
She's still, I mean, every Harry Potter book has her name on it. She's still, you know, I'm a great fan of her under the name J.K. Is it J.K. Galbraith? No, Robert Galbraith. Great detective stories. I mean, actually, yeah, she's having a really tough time, but she hasn't been cancelled. And I think you're absolutely right to talk about the Soviet Union, where you know, we've just seen Alexei Navalny, who is going to be sent to jail for the rest of his life. Right? This is a cultural war, and there are people not famous like J.K. Rowling who have found themselves in problems. But actually, it was ever thus. This has gone on. There's nothing new about the cancel culture.
Social media has made it worse because it encourages the mob mentality where you can have someone just makes a faux pas and their life is ruined, their family is targeted, you have people outside their homes. I do think that is a problem that's got worse.
Right, well, let me know your thoughts on that. I'm going to very, very briefly just try and squeeze in another topic, if I may, because there is an area, one of UK's most deprived areas, actually. It's been nicknamed Bucky Belt after 4 betting shops have opened up just yards away from each other. It's Washwood, Heath Road in Ward End, Birmingham, I'm talking about. It's got high levels of unemployment and low income. But you can gamble at 4 branches. I mean, look at this. Can you see that? On your screen. Look how close these things are to each other. You've got Ladbrokes, Paddy Power, Betfred and William Hill all pretty much on each other's doorsteps. Anyway, long story short, just for time reasons, it's been widely criticised. Do you think that we should be in a situation where you can have that many betting shops squished into high streets of deprived areas? James?
No, I mean, I think it's incredibly depressing. When I went around the country in 2016 for my book, in the most deprived areas, there were always more bookies, pawn shops, and payday lenders. And I think that's testament partly to the decline of the high street. And I don't feel like successive governments of all parties have done enough to prevent high streets falling into this state of disrepair.
So I've literally only got a minute or so left on the programme.
So these gambling companies are absolutely disgusting. I mean, they prey on addiction. They encourage addicts to spend more money. Gambling addiction absolutely destroys people and destroys families. It's not just about the high street. It's about the whole thing. It's about, you know, you watch football or rugby and everywhere there are adverts for
So what do you want? Gambling companies to be banned?
I think we should think about it. I don't
Really?
see why they're any better than cigarettes, actually. And I'm somebody who has gambled and smoked.
But what if you're just someone who just wants a cheeky flutter that's not an addict? Are you not allowed under Scarlett's regime?
We've got to be really, really careful that we ban things on their moral value because soon we'll have no pubs left, we'll have no fast food shops left, we'll have no gambling shops left, and we'll have no high street.
I think we need to think about gambling. I really do.
To ban everything, doesn't it?
Okay, I was wrong to say ban, but I just think we need to think about gambling. I think and you know the people who are making millions out of gambling are not the gamblers. They're the people running the companies, and they're making it out of. I mean, it is like they're making out of desperation, and it's like the companies, you know, who make their millions out of cancer.
Well, I've got to say, different opinions there on the panel. When I see that high street there and I see all those betting companies crammed together, it does make me feel uncomfortable. But what do you do about that? Do you start saying you can only have one betting shop per X amount of miles or meters? If betting shops, why just betting shops? Why not pubs? Why not anything else? I mean, where do you draw the line? Who orchestrates and manufactures what a high street looks like? There you go. You can ponder on that tonight, because that is all I've got time for. That's your homework. What should a high street look like? Anyway, thank you very much to my panel, and thank you at home for your company. Have yourselves a wonderful evening, and I'll see you tomorrow, 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. See you then.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Stormy conditions on the way through the rest of this week. We have an amber weather warning in place through Wednesday across parts of northern Britain because of Storm Dudley. Ahead of that, this evening, another area of low pressure will bring wet and increasingly windy conditions. But here comes Storm Dudley behind that through Wednesday afternoon and evening across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. That's where the strongest winds are likely to be. But back to Tuesday evening, wet weather spreading across most areas, some snowfall over the hills across Scotland, staying pretty cold here as well. But elsewhere, temperature dropping this evening well down into single figures, but numbers by dawn, look at that, 9 in Hull, 11 in Cardiff, double digits across the south to start Wednesday. So it's not a cold start, and for much of the Midlands, eastern England, we'll see sunny spells through the morning, but it's going to be windy and it turns very wet very quickly across Northern Ireland. Heavy rain moves into southern Scotland and northern England to parts of North Wales. Most places turning pretty soggy by the end of Wednesday, and it will be blustery. But it will also be mild. Temperatures 10 to 15 maybe across the southeast, a little colder in the far north of Scotland. Now in the far north, the winds may well stay light, but elsewhere blustery conditions. And we have warnings in place. Amber warning covering southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour. A yellow warning extending further south into Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. Travel disruption, likelihood of damage to trees. Power interruptions also possible, particularly in that amber area. So a blustery Wednesday evening as that storm system moves through, the winds steadily easing through the night, so that by Thursday, Dudley's out the way. It'll still be a blustery day with sunshine and showers, but here comes the next storm. This is Storm Eunice arriving on Friday. Still some uncertainty about the track and location, but some strong wind from that storm more likely across the southern half of the UK.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.